Hello, Charlie TCG here, and welcome to Mastering Dragapult EX, the ultimate guide to play what I think could be one of the strongest decks in the new format. So in today's video, I'm going to break down exactly how and why you should play Dragapult, breaking down also the different partners that Dragapult has really have access to in the meta. We're going to look at the deck list of where kind of talk about my thoughts and feelings about how I think Dragapult really is going to be looking into going into NAIC in just a few days' time. The other inclusions, which could be really good for your own gameplay, the board setup, as well as also the matchup spread, where Dragapult has an in-depth guide about how you should really approach every single matchup. So without further ado, let's look at exactly what is Dragapult EX. Well, Dragapult is a Terra Pokemon, which is Dragon type, making it has no weakness or resistance with a 1 retreat cost, which definitely is really key. And now it has 2 attacks where we're going to focus on its second one, Phantom Dive, for a fire and psychic energy, which can be a little bit tricky at times to get that set up, 200 damage, and then put 6 damage counters on your opponent's bench Pokemon in any way you like. Now this is really good because it helps you out spread attack, making sure you can deal a huge amount of damage, potentially take multiple price turns. But what makes Dragapult EX so good? Well, its stage 1 Draclo has a really good ability, Recon Directive. Let's look at the top 2 cards of a deck, put one of them in your hand and the other one at the bottom of the deck. Now this is really good for thinning, it's also consistency cards, because if there's a card which you don't really want to see, you might not even see that from likes of Iono, Research, you would only really get that if your deck is ever shuffled up. Pidgeot EX is also a great partner for Dragapult EX, very similar to like how Charizard it works. Pretty much making sure you can use access to a quick search, making you get any one card you want from your deck any single turn is really key. To get your key supporter card, your potential ace spec like up in your energy, or potentially even the Dragapult EX itself. Xatu, I absolutely think is one of the best partners as well. For that Clairvoyant Scent, has a really good inbuilt draw factor. If you attach a Psychic Energy card from your hand to one of your bench Pokemon, you get 2 and draw 2 cards, which is really good. It helps with a very difficult energy cost what Dragapult EX has. Other ways to kind of help fuel its attack cost is the likes of Mela, which can only be used if one of your Pokemon was knocked out. You can attach a Fire Energy from Dragapult to one of your Pokemon in play, and either draw up till you have 6 cards in hands, and up in your energy as your ace spec of choice, lets it be attached to a stage 2 Pokemon and provides 2 energies, which definitely really fills the requirement for Phantom Dive. But to make all this work, Arven is your key piece, getting any of your key tool cards, as well as also your item cards like Rare Candy and also Buddy Puffin. So that kind of gives a rough understanding about some of the really good key cards about what makes Dragapult EX really tick. So right now, let's look at the partners really in depth and look at Xatu and why is Xatu so good. Like I said, it has a brilliant energy accelerator and draw for the deck. Drawing 2 cards plus putting an energy out in play is absolutely detrimental for Dragapult to really keep working. It helps you feel your attack is definitely in the late game. Setting up a Dragapult potentially, if it's got 0 energies having 1, is really good. But one of the downsides I do find about Xatu is it is a stage 2, but you also have to rely on it to really stream the attacks going on. Sometimes your opponent really focus on the Xatu, and also you're only limited to 1 energy. If you remove the likes of your up in your energy, this Xatu could definitely, if it's gone, can really slow down some of your own gameplay. Another one as well is like Pidgeot EX. A lot of people have definitely focused that this is probably the best partner for Dragapult. It gets you pretty much everything every single turn. Gets you Candy, up in your energy, Pult, like I mentioned before, the Supporter, the Boss's Orders, the Iono. There are so many good key cards what really unlocks the Pidgeot EX. There's also a great pivot card. Having free retreat, not relying on having the rescue board attached to any of your Pokemon is really good. It also helps you really with your setup, especially if you get it out turn 2. But again, one of the limitations of this one, it gives up 2 prizes and doesn't really draw you some cards like on board. But it does get you any of your cards. So I do think that Pidgeot EX is one of the strongest partners. Some other partners which I think are just a little bit outside the bubble, which didn't make the cut, one of them is Charizard. Now this saw a lot of hype in the early source stages in Japan this time last month. It's really good, it gets to flood the board with a ton of energy with Charizard's Infernal Rain ability. And also it's an absolute good late game attacker in your deck. Because obviously you always capped at doing 200 damage and the 6 damage spread thing. Charizard is a really good cleaner. If your opponent's taking 5 prizes, for 2 energies, Charizard can hit for 300 damage, which is absolutely really good. But again, it does give up 2 prizes and doesn't draw you any cards with the setup. Pidgeot gets you any card you want to have. Xatu gets you to draw 2 cards and an energy accelerate. But Charizard, once it's done its job, potentially is only just going to be sitting there until you can attack with it. So I do think that's one of the limitations what Charizard has to offer in Dragapult. But kind of like taking up the likes of doing 300 damage in the late game if your opponent's taking 5 prizes, it's definitely not something to be missed out with. Loston as well is a partner which obviously did very well in Japan Championships, which ended up getting top 16. What makes Loston a really good partner for Dragapult is it has a good range of single price attackers. Think of likes of Sableye, Cramorant, even Radiant Charizard. These can be really good to help set up your own side. Dragapult and Comfy can pretty much fill up your hand, and you're seeing potentially 10 to 20 cards per turn with likes of their abilities, as well as also Chorus as well. So that's another really good key card. And sometimes it's really good to know about when you should play Dracloak, as well as also draw with Comfy. Because potentially with Dracloak, you obviously put one to hand, one bottom of the deck, while Comfy you put one to hand and one in the Blossom. So again, you're seeing 4 cards of all of these 2 abilities, which is really good. But sometimes you're not attacking with Dragapult to the late game. You have to rely on a single prize board state and potentially only running one copy of Red Candy. So you can't really get the energy acceleration out from like some Mirage Gate to your Dragapult very early on. That's definitely some of the limitation what Lost Zone has to offer. So definitely that's looking at some of the partners, but what makes this deck so good. So now let's talk about how really to play Dragapult EX. There's lots of different versions how to play this one. Now this one does not focus around the TM evolution, which saw some success, but I think more recently it's definitely fallen a little bit from the wayside. For the ideal sort of turn one is if you go first or second, you want to flood the board with Dreepy and get at least a Pidgey and Natu out there. You want to have that one because you want to have Pidgey to get into Pidgeot and Natu to get into Xatu to help you with the draw factor that way. Rotom is also a really good key card to have on the bench as well. Drawing at the end of a turn with 3 cards, think about how powerful Charizard is. As soon as you end a turn by drawing 3 cards, those 3 extra cards really help you get potentially your setup with Dragapult. It's also your key cards as well. Turn 2, you definitely want to evolve your Pidgeot and Dragapult and really start attacking with up and your energy attached. You want to add that threat. Sometimes if your opponent starts with a Lumineon or Rotom, you can effectively take 3 prizes that way. That's what makes Dragapult so powerful because it's such high HP and 0 weakness. Turn 3 or 4, you definitely want to keep up the attachment. You want to bench and potentially another Dragapult. You want to build up your board. You want to have your Xatus out and play. Have your Pidgeot to get any of your 1 cards you want to have. And definitely from turn 4 onwards, especially in the late game, you want to get your Radiant Charizard out as a really good late game attacking option. 250 damage, especially, is really good and very easy to get these big one-hit KOs, with Phantom Dive really setting up multiple knockouts for this card to really come in and sweep and potentially win you the game. So, one of the strengths about what makes Dragapult so good is it has one of the best amazing spread attacks right now in the game. You can take multiple prize cards. There are so many times where I play Dragapult where you've potentially taken 4 or 5 cards because you're constantly strategically placing down the damage counters you might want to have. I know the 6 damage counters, you can instantly go, oh, I'm going to KO the 60 HP Charmander or the 60 HP Frigibax or get rid of a Tatsugiri and get the KO that way. But you can also be really good against Gardevoir, spraying out multiple damage where they potentially can't energy accelerate from the discard pile to potentially get retreat out. And you can even set up and get multiple prize cards that way. There's no weakness in high HP. It makes it really difficult to KO. Because having that, they have to hit that 320 damage to get an instant one-hit kill. There are some decks that can easily do this one, the likes of Gholdengo, as well as also Chien-Pao, and the likes of Raging Bolt. So with the decks which you could definitely worry about, but I do think having the Dragon type really goes in its favor. Support Pokemon is absolutely key. That's one of the strengths of what Dragapult really has to offer. Pidgeot, Xatu are really good. Gain any card you want to have, so it's also a draw factor of this deck. Also Dracloak, again, you're seeing multiple cards that way. I do think that Bills are definitely focusing more on the going into Red Candy and not focusing on Dracloak's ability, because I do think that having a Dragapult out in play is definitely much more detrimental to your gameplay. And also has that inbuilt drawing consistency, which I really like about this deck. But all these strengths about Dragapult, we see it do really well in all these tournaments, but it's not doing what people would have. It could really have the capability about what we saw in Japan. So why do you think one of the weaknesses is that it has a really low damage output? A cap of 200 damage, it's mostly 2-hitting all the big decks. It doesn't even one-hit KO likes of Chien-Pao or even likes of a Teal Mask Ogerpon, which is 210 HP. So again, that's one of the weaknesses of what Dragapult really has to offer. So again, that 2-hit is definitely something which can be a bit of a limitation. The energy requirement is really hard to keep up. A fire and a psychic energy, you're not going to be using a pure, you have to have a split energy deck. Do you have to play more fire or more psychic? Depends on what build you're playing. If you're playing a more heavy Xatu build, you have to focus more on more psychic energies. Or if you play a heavy Charizard build, you've got to focus a lot more on fire energy. But then you've got to find a way to get the additional extra energy requirement. That's why you're playing like some up and Neo energy, but your ace spec isn't a consistency card. It isn't like an unfair stamp or even a Scuba Cyclone, which can like heal a Dragapult or disrupt your opponent. You're only relying on energy, which can instantly be removed from the likes of an Enhanced Hammer. And generally, you miss an attack or an attachment, it is so hard to get back into the game. So if you miss an attack, or if you don't get a turn to Dragapult, or you can't get an energy attachment, it basically is very much a losing battle. What Dragapult really had to climb a huge hill to keep up this one. Now, with that being said, I still think Dragapult is so good. I think it has one of the best attacks around in the game, the spread factor, it's also the support. So let's now look at where I'm seeing the deck. And as you saw, this was from the video on Sunday, which I did for NEIC, and it's definitely what I think while testing. And I'm going to talk exactly about why it counts. So I play a 4-2-3 line Dragapult. Why is that? I think you definitely need to capitalize on Dreepy because you really want to focus on getting out them as much as possible and don't rely on it. Surprise, we aren't playing likes of Heavy Ball. Tutor Close, because I still think its ability Recon Directive is really powerful to kind of like look at multiple cards and really help you dig for your options. There's also Dragapult EX. It is your main attacker option. You don't really want to use Jet Headpad, you always want to be using Phantom Dive. So streamlining multiple attackers with likes of Xatu, Hacks and Mela, as well as also upping your energy is really key to your setup. A 202 line of Pidgeot EX is definitely the best way around it. This is way how you can get every single one of the cards you might want to need. This can get your Arven, this can get your Mela, this can get your Enhanced Hammer, your Upper Neo Energy, your Radiant Charizard, sometimes even Rotom V to really utilize Electrum Spore Steel Stone. It is really key for Dragapult to really have great success. I've already talked a lot about the 1-1 line of Natu. Now, some people have thought that maybe Bibarel is much better, and I will get down to that very shortly. But I think Xatu definitely really opens up a deck a lot more by having that inbuilt draw factor as well as also that energy acceleration. The V cards of support are choice of Rotom and Lumineon. Again, very similar to like Charizard, Rotom helps you draw some multiple cards, and Lumineon gets your supporter. You play a lot of really key supporter cards, so having multiple outspheres is really good. And that Radiant card is Radiant Charizard. Some people thought we need to play Radiant Alakazam because that's a much stronger choice. But I think Radiant Charizard really has offer so much to Dragapult. You can have a Kieran as well as also a Defiance ban as one. Effectively, if you're behind in prices and going into an EX, you could do 310 damage. That one hit kills likes of a Gardevoir EX. So again, this deck has a lot of a huge pack of punch. Enhanced Hammer really helps get rid of missed energy, that's also removing Upper Neo energy against the opponent's side. 2 copies of Countercatcher is a really good gusting effect alongside 1 boss's orders. 2 Earthen Vessel to get any of your energy cards you might need to have, and reusing any of your attacking option energy back in the deck for the likes of Super Rod. And then there are 4 counts. We do play 4 copies of Rare Candy, 4 copies of Ultra Ball, 4 copies of Body Puffin, and 2 copies of Nestful. Again, ways to constantly get out any of your Pokemon. I do think because you're playing another line of a stage 2 Pokemon, you really need to capitalize on having the maximum amount of Rare Candy. Supporter cards, we play 1 Boss's Orders, 1 Kieran, 2 Mela, 3 Iono, and 4 copies of Arven. Now, you might go, like I mentioned before, why on earth is Mela in this one? I mentioned it briefly because it is so good for energy acceleration in the late game. If one of your Pokemon gets knocked out, it has an inbuilt draw factor, as well as also energy accelerated fire energy from the discard pile. Kira is also your switching card. This deck can definitely struggle against a block plaque, so guaranteeing a switching effect is really key. It's also gusting from Boss's Orders. 3 Ionos and 4 Arven are definitely your supporters of choice. Iono to really disrupt your opponent, also really good in the early game. Getting a fresh card of 6 definitely really swings you in so many matchups. And Arven, because you are an evolution style build and playing quite a lot of really key tool cards, it's really good to get a guaranteed way to get Rare Candy, Ultra, sometimes even an Enhanced Hammer or Rescue Board to get that switching out. Our tool cards, we do play 1 Forest Seal Stone, 1 Rescue Board, and 1 Defiance Ban. Defiance Ban making sure that Random Dive, if your opponent has taken 1 or 2 prize cards, you're doing 230 damage on Dragapult. Again, really key, especially if you're early mass matchup. Rescue Board to have additional more pivot out and play, potentially your Rotom or Lumineon, something even as Xatu is really key. And again, Forest Seal Stone to get any 1 card you want to have. Energy cards, we do play Upper Neo Energy as our ace spec, 3 Psychic, and 3 Fire. Because this is a build which definitely doesn't focus on one or the other, that's why I've gone with a straight split for the Psychic and Fire, and so far it's worked really well into my favour. And Up in Neo Energy, make sure you can guarantee a turn to attack with Dragapult EX. So I'm really happy with this list. Right now I'll talk to you about some other inclusions, some deck cards which potentially you're thinking about and thinking, oh, what can I cut around this one? Or do we think it actually could be good, Charlie? So I'm going to talk to you exactly about why these cards could actually see some play. So that one is Bibarel, and definitely if you want to know why Bibarel is so good, watch Andrew Bahone's video he posted, I believe, last week, and it really does explain so well about Bibarel as being absolutely incredible. It draws you all the cards you might need to have, not relying on the likes of the Pidgeot EX to kind of guarantee get it, or Arven. You can just draw 5 cards, and it works super well. It helps against late game Iono or Roxanne, or even Unfair Stam. So I do think that's a really good key card about what makes Bibarel so good. But it's a very high retreat card. So if you see we're only playing like not many switching cards out, you might need to have more switching cards, even go to the Scoop Up Cyclone build to kind of like reutilize this Pokemon and not be trapped against any stall cards. So I do think Bibarel is very nice. Tatsugiri, I've played this and I do think it's really good. The attract customers' ability, making sure you have the top 6 cards and basically having a Poke every single turn. Helps to get the early Arven, the late game boss, and also a really good pivot if it has a rescue board attached to this. But its low HP makes it a liability. It's very easy pickings from Sableye or Radiant Greninja, or sometimes opposing Dragapult players can helpfully snipe that one because it's not really going to be removed. So that's one limitation about Tatsugiri, but it really does help with your inbuilt consistency. But bench space is so crucial right now. Potentially, this could maybe definitely make a cut. Magnifi as well was definitely a cut which I definitely kind of like got rid of because it really does protect against multiple Radiant Greninjas. I'm definitely seeing that Lost Box and even Chien-Pao definitely fallen a little bit from favour, and Wellspring Ogerpon isn't mainly in most of the Lugia decks. So I do think that having no Magnifi is actually a good thing. It also takes up vital bench space and a terrible starting Pokemon. If we see that Lugia as well as also Raging Bolt are some of the best decks right now in format, these are the big, heavy, pretty much basic attacking options and not really going on the bench. That's why I do think Manaphy isn't going to be very good, but you do play lots of low HP Pokemon, so it does help you and protect you in that sort of style. Radiant Alakazam was another cut, which I was definitely a bit sad to kind of get rid of, but I do think that Radiant Charizard is definitely a much stronger pick. What makes Radiant Alakazam so good? Because it has to move around your damage count to potentially take a prize card in your turn. It helps you set up like some Chien-Pao, Raging Bolt, or something like even a Miraidon, especially in your turn by moving those damage counters across to hit that magic 220 damage, which it definitely needs. It also has a pretty good secondary attacking option, 200 damage for the amount of cards in your opponent's hand. If you're against a Lotto player or even someone like a Raging Bolt, they're going to have these big, potentially 10 to 20 card hand. So potentially doing a big one-hit KO potential is really, really key. But Dragon Ball's damage output is so low, but sometimes doesn't even help boost the damage up that much. Obviously, it can really help get the setup attacks by moving around any of your damage counters, but I do think out of Radiant cards, this is one of the cards which could definitely be a good snap between this one and Radiant Charizard as your Radiant card of choice. Unfair Stamp, let's look at some of the ace specs, and I played quite good success with Unfair Stamp, and I'm a big fan of this card because it's really good against disruption against your opponent, making sure that if your opponent takes one any knockout, making them go down to 2 cards, especially against Raging Bolt, could really swing the matchup completely into your favor in the mid to late game. But it can only really be activated as soon as your opponent gets a KO. I know that's one of the only limitations, but I think Unfair Stamp is definitely my second pick, and the other card will be sleeping up in Dragapult right now going forward, because I think it's really good for disruption. But I think the Pidgeot build, because you want to be so fast and aggressive, you really need it up in your energy. Another good key card, which I definitely saw quite good success, is the Scoop Up Cyclone. It's really good to switch out from if your opponent gets a boss stall option. Also heal the Dragapult. If your opponent's taking a big 300 damage on the Dragapult, you might go, oh no, I can't really, it's going to get easy one-hit code. All right, I'll get Arvin for Scoop Up Cyclone, pick it up, get it for a Steel Stone, attach it to Rotom, use that ability, get another Dragapult all of a sudden ready to go. But I do think that's one of the big strengths about this one. But because it doesn't really help with consistency in the early game, you might have to accidentally discard this one to really help your setup completely. So that's one of the limitations I do think what Scoop Up Cyclone has to offer. And the last ace spec I want to talk about is Prime Catcher. Prime Catcher is really powerful, especially for good gusting effect, and we did see this have some good success in some Dragapult lists, only in a few of them. It's a great gust. It also helps with the spread part. So sometimes I really think about like of a Gholdengo matchup, you could do 6 damage to Gholdengo and 20 to the 200 damage to the active one. Prime Catcher bring up this one of 6 damage, 60 damage counters, or 6 damage counters on this one, sorry, and then get full price growth that way. So I do think that's a good thing about why Prime Catcher could be a really good inclusion, helping with that spread sort of fact. But it might be hard to find if no Pidgeot is in play. Yes, you have Arvin. Yes, you do have Pidgeot to find this one. But I do think out of the other sort of aspects of choice, I was definitely more leaning towards like Up in New Energy and Unfair Stamp, because those are definitely the best partners to go with Dragapult. Now let's look at some tool cards. Technical Machine Evolution. A lot of people thought this would be the best way to play Dragapult. People have started to build it like Gardevoir, and now kind of changed it to likes of Charizard, focusing on the Pidgeot build and a much more aggressive turn 2 attack, whereas Gardevoir sometimes the turn 2 or 3 sort of attack if you're very lucky. Obviously, it's really good if you go second, getting the more Zartus and Dracloaks out, really helping you with setup and going in to play a less rare candy build. It's very searchable for likes of Arvin, and also a great discard late game. It's your Earthen Vessel, it's your Ultra Ball discarding effect, and you don't have to rely on discarding any of these key cards. But sometimes if you miss it, your setup is incredibly weak. That's one of the worrying things I do have about Team Evolution. Your deck is so prone to focus on this one. Like if you miss it from like Arvin or if it's Prize, it can be really detrimental to your setup. That's why I've kind of gone away for this one, focusing more on a heavy and rare candy build to really capitalize on that sort of factor. Another technical evolution machine is Devolution. Now this one can help take multiple prize cards because you're spreading a ton of damage, especially if you think about it from the likes of Charizard, Gardevoir, Chien-Pao. You can potentially take 2 to even 4 prize cards just by de-evolving all their Excaliburs or Pidgeots or even Charizard EXs. And it's easily searchable from likes of Arvin. But looking at the format right now, we're going to a very heavy and basic EX format. This card will definitely not be needed. Yes, it can help you in the likes of Lugia by bringing them back up, but I generally think this isn't going to be as strong and swing you in the sort of favor against the likes of Raging Bolt, because that deck absolutely swings in the style of deck. So I do think that's the reason why I have got Technical Evolution. If we're seeing Miraidon, Lugia, and Raging Bolt potentially going to become some of the strongest cards right now, I do think this card becomes a big cut straight away. Some other stadium cards which could see some good play is Temple of Sinnoh. Temple of Sinnoh stops likes of Mist Energy and sometimes also Upper Neo Energy, which can also obviously, the Mist Energy prevents the spread part of the attack. So kind of having an instant bounce to that one is really, really good. And it's also good stadium bug. Getting rid of likes of Pokestop, sometimes even Collapse Stadium, or even likes of Jamming Tower is really, really crucial in certain matchups. But also, like I said, it turns off your opponent's Upper Neo Energy. It also turns off your own Upper Neo Energy. So definitely something to be a little bit more considerate about when you would be playing this card. Another one is also Collapse Stadium. And I really like Collapse Stadium. It removes the likes of Rotom and Minion on your bench, removing any of those liabilities, or sometimes even a really heavy damage Dragapult. But granted, it can remove some of your heavily damaged stuff, it can also remove any of your opponent's heavily damaged stuff. So I do think if you are going to be focusing on having Collapse Stadium in your deck, definitely be more considerate about this one. If you want to focus on your spread, this could actually sometimes hinder your gameplay overall. Now, looking at some of before we get into the matchup spread, I wanted to look at the ideal board setup. If you go first, if you go second, I think this is the best way from the list I shared to you, the best way. You want to have at least 3 copies of your Treepiece out there because you want to have that protection. You want to constantly be attacking out with Dragapult, even if they get a cheeky Greninja play out. 1 Pidgey and 1 Natu as a support card of choice. If you prize a Natu, definitely having capitalized on 2 Pidgeys is really good, and 1 copy of Rotom. End your turn with 3 additional cards is very, very nice. Even if you go first or second, it can get you your Arvins, it can get you any of your key setup cards to really help you flood the board with your energies and also get your attacks rolling. Again, one thing I'm going to be mentioning a lot about what the problem with Dragapult is it sometimes has that really awkward energy requirements, and that's one thing that definitely having that Rotom to draw it, that inbuilt draw factor, really does it's crucial for your setup. So let's have a look at the matchups. And honestly, I think it's a pretty okay spread around the board. But I think some of its most favorable matchup is Gardevoir, Charizard, Giratina, Gholdengo, and Rory Moon, the Ancient Box version. The even matchups I think are like some Chien-Pao, Lost Box, and Origin Form Dialga. And some of the most unfavorable ones are, of course, Raging Bolt, Ogerpon, Lugia with Legacy Energy, Miraidon, and both control aspects, so it's a Pidgeot and Snorlax. So I'm going to break down deeply into this one. I did a really, really good sort of crucial breakdown for the top 3 decks, I think, right now in the metagame. Dragapult really easily beats Gardevoir, Gardevoir really easily beats Raging Bolt, and Raging Bolt really easily beats Dragapult. So I do think those are some of the key 3 decks right now. And I can see here that looking at the even matchups and even favorable one, it's a very, very good way into this one. But like I mentioned, if 3 of the top decks right now, you have a very unfavorable matchup, how on earth do you win and get this one? So let's break down to exactly about what you should do in nearly every one of these matchups. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video so far. Obviously, I've done quite a few of these ones, like the Chien-Pao and Gardevoir. If you are a big fan of these ones, definitely let me know because I love making these ones. And let's break down right now what you do into a Gardevoir. And Gardevoir actually, I think, is a very, very nice matchup into this one. Your aim is to constantly KO the likes of Curlies and Gardevoirs. You don't want to have their setup constantly on board. If you could potentially get a 3 prize card by removing the likes of Gardevoir and Munkidori, that's a really, really good way around how to play around it. You want to spread the damage on their attackers, making sure that they can't get any energy attached to this one. For example, say you have a Drifloon with 6 energies to this one, and they might only have 2 energies attached to it. That can be very difficult for them to get Gardevoir to sacrifice potentially to get the energies onto this one. You want to map your prize cards to take multiple prizes. That's one of the key things about what makes this such a good matchup, because they're always going to be heavily damaged. That's why you see Munkidori trying to spread the damage across. You want to really kind of capitalize on that sort of heavily damaged sort of one, and they are very, very slow in the deck. They're not going to sometimes get Gardevoir out till turn 3. Worst case scenario, turn 4. By that time, you could potentially take 2 or 3 prize cards and have a big setup spread sort of damage around. One thing definitely you should watch out for is attacking with Gardevoir and no way for you to KO it. They do have quite a lot of HP. They can nearly instantly heal it from the likes of Munkidori. We saw the top 8 list of Japan champions play 2 Munkidori with 2 Darkness Energy. If that gets set up, you can energy accelerate 3 energies to your Gardevoir and instantly heal this one and do 200 and 250 damage to your Dragapult, which is a big, scary threat, and you can't instantly one-hit KO it. Iono and Unfair Stamp, really keep an eye on this one, especially because they can really get you to low hand size and not really kind of like get any of your attackers going. And if they constantly have a streamline of their attackers and they're constantly healing with like Cresselia, Monkey Dory, or even Enturo or Collapsium or Wade there and Gardevoir EX, that can really hinder your spread sort of affecting with Dragapult. I still think it's a very nice matchup. It's where Xatu and Pidgeot really come into thrive. And even Radiant Charizard, like I said, if you have everything going for this one, you can get a one-hit kill on Gardevoir if you're behind in prizes. So again, always something to really keep in mind. Another matchup is Charizard, and I do think Charizard is a very good matchup. And one thing that happened when I was testing it last week a lot is getting the early KOs of Rotom Lumineon and spraying some damage to get a prize card on a Pidgey or Charmander on the bench. Going up by 3 prizes if you go second on your second turn of the game is really good in Charizard EX. They can't one-hit KO you straight away. That's definitely something to be a bit more of a threat. And definitely setting up your rate setup to get big Charizard and Pidgeot KOs is one of the best ways around this one. And always enhance hammer away their missed energy. They want to protect some of their Pokemon. They might want to protect if they have like a Manaphy in play, or sometimes even if they have the likes of a Charizard on the bench, they want to protect it so they're not going to get these big one-hit KOs on it. So definitely something to be a bit more wary about. Something to definitely to watch out for if they can ramp up their attacks early and put too much pressure on. Sometimes they are playing like Kieran and Maxim Belts, so they can potentially get a one-hit kill a lot quicker than it used to do instead of playing like the Prime Catcher and not responding to their Pidgeot early. As we know from multiple times of Pidgeot, is absolutely game-changing. Charizard with Pidgeot is its really scary combination, and definitely something to be a lot more concerned about going into this brand new sort of metagame. But again, I still think these evolution decks, you have a lot more of a free time going into this one because they have still these very low HP basic Pokemon. I do think that Lugia is actually still a very good matchup in Tier 1. It's not really showing up as much in most of the online tournaments as well as also in Japan, but I still think it is definitely going to be a threat. Spread damage multiple times can take multiple prize turns. Comfy unfortunately does have 70 HP, so that is something to be a bit more wary about. But Phantom Dive with some bit of move around there could potentially get a KO on a Giratina V. You do have to spread to get these big one-hit KOs on Giratina, but effectively, if you get an easy spread from a Phantom Dive beforehand, or even a Kieran, even the likes of a Defiance Band, you can one-hit KO the likes of Giratina very easily. So definitely that's one thing that could really help you in that one. But again, stuff to really be wary about in this matchup is Giratina V-Stealth attack. So Reckham can instantly one-hit KO your Dragapult, which again is very scary. And Greninja very early on can take out the likes of Pidgey or Dreepy turn 2. Now, that is one of the other decks we don't simply warrant a threat of potentially might need a Manaphy out in play, but as we're not seeing this be as strong, potentially you don't really need that Manaphy. And again, like most of these decks here, Rock Sound plus Counter Catcher equals pain. You can get it down to 2 cards and also get rid of one of your key setup cards. It's definitely very scary. Giratina can instantly one-hit KO your Pidgeot EX, your big setup attacker, to get your attacks rolling. Another good sort of matchup is actually Gholdengo. Now, I mentioned it briefly, but one of the best ways to kind of play this one is attacking the Gholdengo or setting up another KO on the bench and then boss it next turn, or even sometimes Counter Catcher. Getting that sort of streamlined attacks became 4 prizes while also removing 2 Gholdengos in play is really crucial, especially to your game plan, and potentially really difficult for them to kind of like get going. Pidgeot is absolutely crucial for this matchup, especially in the early game. Yes, I know they need potentially 6 energies to one-hit KO your Pidgeot EX, but you want to have that setup. You want to kind of like streamline these attacks turn after turn, and this deck here can run absolutely rampant. And obviously Radzard is a great cleaner attacking option. Can one-hit KO the likes of Gholdengo, take a Kieran in play, one-hit KO the likes of Palkia. So I do think it's a really key card, especially in this matchup. Again, stuff to watch out for is to bench Palkia early and get the turn 2 Greninja play, which is really scary against every evolving style decks, and then putting on pressure and you not being able to respond to this one. I think Gholdengo could see a little bit of play overall. We'd still got top 32 in Japan. I believe it also got top 8, I believe, in the seniors or junior division. So we are seeing Gholdengo see quite a bit of success over in Japan. Will this translate into national, the NAIC this weekend? I think Gholdengo is not exactly a free matchup, but it's a lot more better in certain other sort of matchups as well. And finally, looking at Ancient Box. And Ancient Box, I think, is another really good matchup because you can get a turn 2 attack and constantly damage the bench. Potentially, you're taking 2 prizes that way. If they have a few Ancient Booster Capture Energy attached to this one, they're going to have 200 HP. You hit for 200 damage, you'll instantly get a one-hit KO on any of their Roy moves or Koraidons out in play. They all start two-shotting you for most of the game, but be very, very careful because they can very aggressively discard and target your support Pokemon, like your Xatu, like your Pidgeot EX, and potentially that'll be their main focus point of the deck. And also, Radiant Charizard is really good. Force them to take a one-price KO. That could be really difficult for them to deal with, especially in the late game. They kind of go 2x2, and they have no basic, you have no two-prize Pokemon out in play. You chuck a Radzard in play, getting potentially one of your last prizes. That can be really difficult for any Ancient Box deck to really kind of like capitalize on that one. So again, that's something to really be considerate about if you are the deck here. Set up your spread damage, set up any of your attacking options, and obviously Dragapult is really, really good to one-hit KO, constant roaring moons, pressure. Look at some even matchup. Chien-Pao, I do still think is even. Sometimes you could say it's slightly unfavored, but in my testing, I do think that Dragapult has a much more even attacking into Chien-Pao. Obviously, you want to target their backs and support Pokemon. That is your key thing, especially if you're spreading damage. Effectively, you could potentially take 2 KO, get rid of one of their Excaliburs, and also spread damage to their 60 HP Frigibacks. Removing that threat can be really detrimental for Chien-Pao. They can't really get any of their attackers going. You could potentially win the game that way. You also want to spread the damage to set up KOs of Chien-Pao. Putting a sprinkle of 2 damage counters on the likes of Chien-Pao EX on the bench could be really, really powerful. Kind of like guaranteeing the KO next turn is really good. Keeping out the pressure with the constant attacks really does put Chien-Pao in the grinder. I do think that Chien-Pao really sometimes can crumble if it's constantly under threat of a KO after KO after KO. And they can't respond. That's one thing about what this deck can really do. And definitely force them to KO Radiant Charizard. That's one of the best things about this deck. You can force them to take a one-prize KO. And that can be really, really detrimental, especially to your gameplay, and really put you in lots more of the driver's side. Again, stuff to watch out for if they play Iron Hands and they play Greninja. That is a big threat. And even we saw the one that got top 32, they can play Palkia and Unfair Stamp and Enhanced Hammer. So again, those are even more bigger threats in the sort of game. But taking multiple prize cards with Iron Hands, with Greninja, can absolutely be devastating for his one. And they sometimes can be much more quicker to get set up. They have Irida to kind of like guarantee getting their rare candies and Excalibur, and sometimes they can keep their attacks a lot more streamlined than you can. So, something to be a bit more bearing in mind with it. Chien-Pao isn't as free as you want for. It can put a lot more pressure on this one. And I do think this is when Pidgeot can sometimes be a bit more against you if they do have Iron Hands out in play. Lost Zone Box is a bit of a struggle sometimes. It's really good because you get the spread damage to take multiple KOs. You can set up, potentially take 3 KOs on Comfies from just bench spraying damage out that way and constantly attacking into the active side. Attacking with Radzard, we're noticing this is appearing a lot because it's such good to force your opponent to take a 7-prize game. Forcing them to take 1 prize card really does swing multiple matchups into your matchup. And also, because you play quite a few Ionos, Iono when you see these large hand, obviously keep an eye on from the likes of Blood and Luna, which can easily kind of like be a big threat in the late game. But Iono in a way, any of their key resources, chuck at the bottom of the deck, can be really, really good for your sort of side. Again, like I mentioned, Roxanne and Iono countercatcher your support Pokemon. It's really, really devastating. And sometimes an early Iron Hands or Greninja pressure can absolutely swing it into their favor. And I do think when multiple decks take multiple prize cards on multiple of your Pokemon, it really does struggle. Dragapult really does. And the last one of the favorite matchup I want to talk about is Dialga. And Dialga, I think, is pretty good in that sort of matchup. Does obviously have quite a lot of HP, but Matang only has 100 HP, and lots of people are now focusing on getting rid of a 60 HP Matang, Belgium's to the 70 HP one. So again, stuff to be a lot more considerate about, because obviously the reason I'm talking about this one, because they've got 2 top 16 places in Japan. You could obviously set up multiple KOs on the Matangs, kind of like take out potentially 2 KOs that way if you constantly get the right setup. You also support that, you want to focus on a support Pokemon, but also getting set ready to KO a big Dialga KO, which is definitely one of the best things about this one. But again, something to really be careful about for Dialga is they can get powered up very quickly, but if you start early, they can potentially take 3 prize cards, and it can be really, really difficult to get back in the game. Yes, obviously you have Iono to remove their sort of hand size, the large hand size, but I think if they get everything ready, they get the Star Chronos, they get the big Metal Blast, it's really difficult for you to get back into game. Now let's talk about what a lot of people are probably here for, the unfavorable matchups. And let's start off by looking at the Ogerpon Raging Bolt deck. Oh boy, is this a bad matchup. Now, but let's talk about some of the good things. One you definitely want to do is get set up an attacking turn 2. You want to go first in this matchup, I think, or even if you go second, wherever you want to really focus on in this deck. I think this deck definitely doesn't mind if it goes first or second. And one thing you always want to do is spread the damage so you can get the setups on the KOs on Ogerpons and Raging Bolts. Because you already get the KOs on Swockabilly, Luminions, Mew, all that stuff. But spreading damage counters, you can put one on Luminion, one on two Ogerpons, four on a Raging Bolt. You've got that guy set up. That's definitely an easy way. So Phantom Dive can these big one-hit KOs. And constantly Iona with a large hand. They're going to have these massive hands. So Iona them to them plays one or even four cards will be really detrimental to their gameplay. But again, stuff they really need to be careful about is if they go second, they can effectively constantly get these big one-hit kills in Dragapult. They need 5 range out and play, you're doing 350 damage. That's so difficult for you to keep up. And that could easily be done from Masada, Energy Attachment, and 2 from Ogerpon. Again, really scary deck right now in the metagame. Bravery Charm makes sure Raging Bolt makes it even more difficult to get a big one-hit KO. Instead of going, oh, I spread the damage counters, right, I've got the KO next turn, they could have took a Bravery Charm as one, have an additional 50 HP. So that's really awesome. You've now got Phantom Dive, plus potentially even more spread damage onto this one. Focus on your Ogerpons, focus on some of the support Pokemon. It's like the best way to kind of get the big one-hit KOs, but it's so difficult to keep up the pressure, especially if they are constantly doing really well, and they did incredibly well over in Japan. Lugia, again, is another very difficult deck. You want to enhance hammer away their legacy and mist energy. That's one of the best ways to kind of counter around this one. Remove any of their legacy energy, so making sure you can get 2 prize cards of a Raging Bolt, an Iron Hand, or 1 prize off a Cinccino, or potentially get rid of a mist energy so you can actually spread your damage counters around. You want to target and spread the damage counters early on the Cincinos. You want to get that out as quick as possible because you don't want to get them to capitalize and spread multiple mist energies out in play. You want to get that spread really early on. And Radiant Charizard is another really good late game attacker. You're seeing that forcing them to take the 1 prizer can be really difficult for certain decks to really deal with, and sometimes can absolutely swing a deck into matchup into your favor. The early pressure of the attacks of Iron Hands is very scary. I know Lugia can be a little bit more inconsistent. It can obviously gain likes of Carmine and the likes of Legacy Energy, which obviously boosted Lugia out so much. But I think having the pressure of early Iron Hands could be really scary for your gameplay. And Mist Energy sticking around and not being able to spread any damage counters, again, is a big losing factor. Only doing 200 damage and not being able to spread is really poor performance from Dragapult. And that's one of the things why Lugia is such a worse matchup. Another really scary matchup is Miraidon. And I played this deck thinking, oh, Dragapult's got such an easy Miraidon matchup. No, they can get Iron Hands out if they go second nearly every single time. And then if you can't respond to an Iron Hand straight away, you have to have the likes of Kieran. You have to have the likes of Defiance Band to try and get instant one-hit KO on the Iron Hands. But sometimes they might even play the likes of a Bravery Charm attached to this one, because again, really scary sort of matchup into that one. But obviously you want to get this big spread damage, get these big one-hit KOs on the Miraidon, the likes of Nisa, Lucario, the Raikus as well, which is really good. Again, force on Radsard. If the opponent takes 4 prize cards, chuck in a Radsard as well with an energy attached one could be really difficult for them to kind of get the setup. And definitely be careful when you are playing the likes of your Pidgeot, because Pidgeotto, because effectively sometimes we see a Zapdos in their victory, Vitality Band, chuck that on a Miraidon, also Iron Hands, also on your Pidgeotto EX. Pidgeot EX becomes a free prize Pokemon, so that's something to be careful about. That's why you play like Subzati is really key in that matchup. Again, Raichu can actually get these big one-hit KOs on Dragapult, which is very scary. And if this deck plays 60 energy, they're going to get that attack very early on. And Iron Bundle, if you can't respond to the Iron Hands, can just force out another single prize Pokemon, or even like some Luminion and take 3 prizes on that way. So Miraidon could be a very scary matchup indeed. Now let's look at the control aspects. This episode is a little bit shorter than most ones, but it's a lot more of a condensed metagame we're talking about. And Pidgeot EX is definitely a scary one. Obviously, I think you should only really attack if you have a stable board. If you have your Pidgeot set up, if you have your the likes of your Zati, if you have multiple ways to kind of like get your Dragapults, I think that's the best way to get the attack. You don't want to have that early pressure on, but again, you've got to be careful of likes of the Luxrays or even Eerie to remove any of those key things. And Radiant Charizard is a really good late game, because obviously sometimes a Pidgeot EX sometimes have the likes of Radiant Charizard or the likes of a Charizard EX as a good late game sweeper. So I do think Radiant Charizard could be really good in the late game. But again, stuff to watch out for is they can swing with Charizard and win the prize trade that way out of nowhere if they mill you out all your key resources. TM Devo can get rid of your whole board and effectively not have any rare candies left, making sure that Pidgeot EX is absolutely gone for good, or sometimes your Dragapults might not even be around there, or they could have even spread some damage out this one. Plus, they play lots of healing cards: Penny, Churro, Sharon's Care, also some of the even likes of a switch card as well. So again, they're going to be removing lots of their spread damage. So that's something to be really, really careful and crucial going into that sort of matchup, is knowing exactly where you should put damage counters on there, because you want to potentially have an even spread, but you don't want to get them absolutely removed from the likes of a switch card. And last control, which I think could be the most popular one, is Snorlax Control. We're seeing it if we see these big basic Pokemon like Lugia, which obviously have really good, Lugia has a good match for this one, but the likes of Miraidon and Bolt do so well. This is where the tech can really capitalize. Kieran is your definitely one and only switch card, so that's a good way to kind of remove this one. Phantom Dive also gets a big one-hit KO on Snorlax, even if they have a Bravery Charm attached to this. So that's an absolutely really good key in that sort of matchup, and only really bench Pokemon that can attack. You don't want to have the likes of a Minion or Rotom in play, because all of a sudden that's a stall play here, and they play 4 Pokemon counter catchers, they seem to play 2 of them, and also they won the game. That's everyone for you to absolutely watch out for, is you don't want to have your support Pokemon out and play as long as possible. You've got to draw a lot of cards, so you'll definitely be the first one to deck out, even if you play 3 copies of Iono, and Handheld Fan will actually move around all your energies. You already have such a nightmare to keep any of your energies in play. Why don't they just move around to Pidgeot EX or move it on to a Luminion, which can never actually be attacking ever? So that's actually the breakdown of where I think all the matchups are. I still think that let's look at the mirror. So if we look at the mirror, I think this is a very much like Charizard, it's very interesting way how to play it. You want to try and get the first attack and spread to get these multiple prizes. You want to stop any of the likes of Xatu and Pidgey taking instant one-hit KO on those ones, then also getting rid of and setting up some Dragapults for the late game. Like I mentioned before, Radiant Charizard, if you're behind with a Kieran, does 310 damage or even 280 if it just has the Kieran out. So definitely something to be considered about, because that instantly one-hit KOs the likes of Pidgeot EX. Enhanced Hammer, wait any of it up in your energy, because if we've seen where Dragapult lists are really going with this one, going into the Pidgeot build, it's absolutely crucial in this one here. Now, stuff to watch out for Dragapult EX. Some lists might be running TM Devo, and they might wipe your board that way. That's something to be really, really concerned about. Sometimes even the likes of Radiant and Alakazam as well to spread damage, potentially take some easy KOs that way. Not evolving your Pokemon early enough could be really, really scary. Not having a Xatu out, not having a Pidgeot EX, or sometimes not even having the likes of your Dragapults or Ultra out really, really early can really slow down your gameplay completely. And Ioning you in the late game and targeting your Pidgeot EX is absolutely devastating. That's pretty much where I would be going in this sort of matchup. So those are every single matchup kind of going in. The ones that the key one as well. It's a lot more of a narrow field we are right now in the metagame, because I only really have these 2 absolutely strong decks. But Dragapult, I think, has a really, really good matchup spread into some of these key decks. Obviously, had a pretty poor one into the likes of Raging Bolt, Miraidon, and Lugia. So some key takeaways about why I think this deck is so good. The spread damage is one of the best in the game right now, and so some really good support Pokemon like Pidgeot EX and Xatu can really, really help you get a big setup. One thing you always be careful about is where you put your energy attachments, but you always want to reuse them with the likes of Super Rod and Earthen Vessel, and Mela is also really, really key supporter card as well. Enhance hammer away any missed energies or up in new energies, and Kieran obviously is a really good switching card and deal additional more damage you might need to have. So I really hope you have enjoyed this Dragapult video. Obviously, it's one of the key points you want to talk about, to get the attack turn 2, spread some damage, take multiple KOs, and have fun. I do think this deck is still absolutely a big powerhouse that it once was, but I don't think it's as strong as people thought it was, especially if we look at the Japan meta share. I hope though I might be a bit proven wrong, and if you're going up to NAIC, I hope this video can be really helpful. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I would love doing these mastering videos, a bit more of an in-depth guide about how to play certain matchups. It's really, really crucial, and I love to share this information with as many people as possible. So like I mentioned before, like the video, comment down below where do you think Dragapult is. Is this the list that you think it's going to be better, or do you think another version is better? I would love to talk about it in the comment section below. So I will see you guys very soon for another video. Good luck to everyone who's competing at NAIC, and yeah, just have fun in Dragapult. Bye for now.